Hi, everyone, and welcome to 3 Reasons Salespeople Write Practice Proposals. Let's dive right in and start eliminating those crazy proposals that eat up a lot of time and make us absolutely no money. So, why do salespeople write practice proposals? Well, often when I'm coaching a salesperson, I'll ask this question: should you have been there in the first place? And by being there, I mean you might have the greatest selling skills, those of the late Zig Ziglar. You might have the greatest product or service. But the fact is, if you're not calling on, meeting with your ideal prospect, there's a real good chance you're not going to get the business. You're going to write a practice proposal. So the first thing to eliminate practice proposals is to get very clear on who you pursue. Who is that ideal client? Now, often I see salespeople and sales organizations creating their pursuit strategy. And within that strategy, they'll talk about the demographics of their ideal client. That could be the vertical, the channel, size of company, number of employees, locations, all very important. However, equally important is that you take into account the psychographic or the attitude of your best clients. Because when you do a win-loss analysis, you will find that the psychographic is generally getting that piece of business across the finish line just as much as the demographic. Let me share a couple of examples. We work with a large branding and strategy company, and they go into larger companies and actually will help them augment their focus groups, then their R&D, their research and development. Now, they've got to be really careful that they're partnering with a firm that believes in outsourcing. They believe in outside advice. So in their interview process, they ask questions to disqualify the prospect. They don't like practice proposals. And one of those questions is simply testing the data. Mr., Ms. Prospect, you've got a large R&D department. You've got talented people. You've got the expertise internally. What's making you look outside your firm? Now, one of two answers generally comes back that tells them this prospect is serious. The first is, you know what, we're just stuck. We can't figure out why we're not getting the right answers. Or the second is this: you know, we think we're starting to get a little herd mentality around here, that group think, and we don't think it's serving us well. We need some outsiders to come in, check our thinking, check our perspective. At that point, my client is willing to keep moving forward on the sales process. They aren't going to get stuck writing a practice proposal. I'll share with you, in my world, education is the psychographic that determines whether I'm going to work with a client or not. I have had $2 million firms invest more than $100 million firms because they believe that education is an investment, one that compounds. They don't look at training, education, and consulting as an expense. That's the major psychographic I look for if I'm going to continue to keep a prospect in my pipeline. Now, let's look at another reason that salespeople often get down that practice proposal pathway. They confuse price for pain. Let me say that again. They confuse price for pain. Here's what happens. They're meeting with that prospect, and the prospect says, no, we really think we need a better price. Salesperson says, I've got a better price. Now, the fact is, price is not pain. In fact, the only pain you can be assured of is probably that this prospect is going to be a pain. They're going to be the type of customer that goes out for bid every year. They make sure that they're testing your prices every year. They're going to treat you like a vendor, not a partner. So the better question to ask to see if you've got a price shopping prospect or a value prospect on your hand is this. You know, Mr. Prospect, when you say you want a better price, is it price, or do you not think you're getting the value for which you're currently paying? The answer will tell you if you've got a cheap prospect that simply buys on price, doesn't value expertise, relationships, innovation, or if you've got that prospect that replies, well, actually, I don't think we're getting the value. Now you're on to that consultative call, that solution selling call, where you indeed might be able to add value, might be worth writing a proposal. Next, let's talk about a soft skill that absolutely can help you stop writing those practice proposals: assertiveness. And assertiveness is an EI skill. It's the ability to state what you need nicely. And wow, have I seen this skill affect the ability to execute a hard selling skill, a selling stage. Let's take a look at 3 areas where lack of assertiveness forces and often has a salesperson writing that practice proposal. Next steps, budget and decision. Next steps. Here's the scenario. You're meeting with a prospect. You're having a good meeting. Likability is there. Rapport is there. You're asking the great questions, but you're not hearing a compelling reason for that prospect to invest in your product or services, to move from their existing vendor. Now, salespeople that lack assertiveness will go along to get along. And so when that prospect says, that sounds interesting, could you write up a proposal? The salesperson does so, even though he or she did not hear any reason for that prospect to make a change. The assertive salesperson is also good at reality testing. And the reality is, this is probably not a qualified prospect. And they simply say, Mr. Prospect, I appreciate your interest. However, I'm not hearing enough reason for you to change. Pay more. Invest. What am I missing? That is the moment of truth in the conversation. And at that point, the prospect might agree and say, yeah, you're right. Or they might stop and think and say, well, really, here's why. Now you're on to a value conversation, a qualified conversation. Salespeople, it is okay not to take a next step with prospects. It's okay to disqualify prospects. Your time is too valuable. Let's take a look at budget. So here's what happens. Sales is predictable. You ask the prospect, what have you set aside for this project, product, service? And the predictable answer is, I have no idea. Just put something together. The non-assertive salesperson goes along to get along, and they come back for that meeting only to hear the prospect who did not know their budget say, that's a lot more than I wanted to invest. This is out of our range. Congratulations. Lack of assertiveness, being willing to ask what they were willing and able to invest, just caused you to write a practice proposal. And then, of course, there's decision making. Now, every CEO, every sales manager, every salesperson has read the book, Talk to the Buying Influences. And yet, when it comes time to execute that hard selling skill, lack of assertiveness may prevent you from asking for what you need. And what you need is to have a conversation with all the people that are going to be affected by this particular purchase, by the implementation of this product or service. So assertive salespeople ask for what they need. And it's pretty simple. They might say, Miss Prospect, in my years of doing business, I have found where we have the best success is when we engage this title, and this title. Can you help me get those meetings set up? Assertive salespeople state what they need nicely. And frankly, if a prospect isn't really willing to collaborate on the front end, they're probably not going to collaborate on the back end, which makes for the best business, a partnership. Now, finally, let's take a look at another mistake I found salespeople and sales teams making that lead to practice proposals. They do that great job of running the meeting. They're consultative. They're solution salespeople. They've uncovered the pain. They've discovered the goal. And then they've written this beautiful recommendation, but they hit the send button and send that proposal via email. Folks, a proposal review needs to be done live, and I don't care if it's on the telephone, in person, or on Skype, because when you send that recommendation over, the prospect's looking at paper and they have to connect the dots. They have to figure out how your solution's going to help them hit that goal or solve that pain. Sending a proposal by email with no live follow-up is probably a sure possibility you're going to end up in the practice proposal bucket, especially when you've got a more assertive, more organized competitor that's setting up that live conversation. So folks, let's prevent practice proposals. Start getting very clear on who is that ideal client, who is your ideal prospect, include both demographics and psychographics. Stop confusing I need a better price with pain. Probably the only pain you've got here is that prospect that's a price shopper and is going to switch business every year or simply take your proposal and take it to the existing vendor and say, match. And of course, develop that soft skill of assertiveness. Soft skills help you execute hard selling skills and sales stages. As I always like to say, the non-assertive salesperson goes along to get along. And going along to get along results in a lot of those practice proposals. So today, share the good news of this sales summit. Share it with your friends and invite others to keep learning because leaders are learners. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate your time today and have a terrific week and apply the great principles to prevent those practice proposals.